Every citizen needs to watch the actual footage about to play. Rosa DeLauro faced a sharp line of questioning with Mark Wayne Mullen over the budget. But it wasn't just about child numbers. Watch what happens when DeLauro says,
Don't you point your finger at me. Don't
I
be a
will
hypocrite.
point my finger
Don't you
at
be a hypocrite
you.
then you be as you should be as upset about the poor.
stay around for the unresolved FEMA question at the end.
Your luggage is returned. Well,
I wish the Biden administration would have done that.
Let me just say this to you, sir. Again, it is my time. 3,900 children were separated from their families.
450,000 kids were lost during the Biden administration. You didn't say a word about
Mr. Secretary, do not interrupt.
Don't you point your finger at me. Don't
I
be a
will
hypocrite.
point my finger
Don't you be
at
a hypocrite
you.
then you be as you should be as upset about the 450,000 kids that were lost. You didn't say a word about it. For 4 years, you never said a word.
Mr. Secretary.
Could you put him in his place for
Don't yell at me.
You should be put in your place.
Mr. Secretary, if you would like 4 minutes for a closing statement when everybody's done, I'll give you that. But while members are on their 8 minutes, I need them to have their 8 minutes.
I started my
I
comments.
appreciate that. My issue is that they say this for sound bites, and I'm not going to let them say something
What did
like
you
that.
do
That's not
just
true.
recently for sound bites? I sympathize with the 400.
We are going to have something resembling order here. The time is the ranking members. If you would like to respond later on, there are methods to do that, but it's not a who can talk louder into the mic.
It's not.
So you are recognized.
Thank you very much.
I will not let her
Mr.
sit there and lie and accuse something this ridiculous.
You
Well,
know-
this is the legislative branch, and it's my hearing, and so I'm going to try to some extent to control it moderately.
And do
Thank you.
not accuse me of lying. Do not.
Then don't.
I do not. I appreciate, and I said to you at the outset, there's concern for children across the board. We care deeply about what's happening to children. And I went to the border and I watched children in those fenced-in places years ago and what was happening to them. So I have a long history, Mr. Secretary, in this area. 3,900 kids were separated. Secretary Azar told me he had a way to reunite them. Many of them were not reunited till today. And I don't want you to answer this now. Please get back to us and tell us what you are doing with regard to the settlement in terms of this issue, which is out there, which your department needs to come close to. I'll make a statement to you again. But this is fact from the bill, Mr. Chairman. The bill that the Republicans have proposed for funding the Department of Homeland Security cuts cybersecurity budget by more than $250 million. It cuts the TSA by nearly $350 million. And the Trump administration is openly advocating for privatizing TSA while trying to eliminate their collective bargaining rights.
The most critical part of the hearing is starting now. They canceled the BRIC funds and completely stalled these infrastructure commitments. That alone set a heavy tone for the room. But Representative DeLauro was not finished. If you want the unfiltered truth about these federal decisions, hit the like button and subscribe. Share below. How long can communities sustain this ambiguity? She shifted the focus to the real-world consequences.
Rights. We all know what happened earlier this year. TSA workers endured the longest government shutdown in history. There was a lot of discussion and talk invoked about the long lines and the use of leverage to force through a Homeland Security bill without any reforms to what were critical ICE and CBP reforms that were necessary, that the American people wanted and were clamoring for. They didn't want to continue to see masked marauders on their streets with just harassing people. Congress eventually passed my legislation that paid TSA workers, funded FEMA, CISA, Secret Service, and the Coast Guard. And today, and it took you 79 days on the Republican side to make that decision to pay these people instead of just talking about paying this. The administration continues to attempt to walk away from the collective bargaining agreement with TSA workers, something that the federal courts have now twice said is illegal. Indeed, Your testimony frames the attempt to force over 200 smaller airports in this country into a new security structure as a setting. And quote, the TSA, this is in the testimony, the TSA is on the path to privatization. My question on this issue is, given all that the Transportation Security Office did for us during a Republican shutdown, how can it be that the department's position is that TSA workers should not be granted the same basic labor protections as federal enforcement officers? How can it be that your priority is to have them work for the lowest bidder, where the wages and the benefits of these workers will unquestionably be lower?
Well, actually, it was the Democrats that voted every time to shut them down. Republicans voted every time to open them up.
Pass,
so
just give me
we
an
didn't
answer
shut them
to my
down. You
question.
shut them down.
Answer my question.
I did.
What are you doing? Why are you moving?
Ma'am, I answered your question. You were the one that shut them down. The Democrats shut down. How many times did you vote to shut them down?
Why? You know, these people come to us to get funding for the work that they do, and we ought
I'm
to
actually
take a look at
factually
the work
correct.
that they
I'm
don't do.
factually correct.
The work
You
that they
voted
don't
to
do.
shut them down. Republicans voted to open them over and over and
Well,
over
what
again.
the
Your vote
Republicans
clearly
finally
stated that
did-
you voted to shut us
what they
down.
finally
It
did-
wasn't until it became
Madam
popular,
Ranking
and then, by
Member.
the way, ICE agents came there and helped bring the
Mr.
lines down. The
Secretary.
same people that you also kept shut down
Mr.
for 115
Secretary.
days. I'm answering the question.
No, you
I thought
didn't,
you said
Mr.
you answered it.
Secretary.
The floor is hers.
My dear,
Actually, I gave it to her. You know, there is a chairman of a committee. That's me. I gave it back to her.
this tells
She's
you
got it.
something about who these folks are. And
have
everybody
another
on
question,
this
Madam
panel.
Ranking
Well,
Member?
yeah, no, I do, but I didn't get an answer to a question.
So the
How
record
can
will
it
so
be-
reflect.
Thank
Please
you.
ask your next
Okay,
question.
and I will. This has to do with FEMA. Simple question. And I want to start where I left off with Secretary Noem last year. FEMA. Simple yes or no. Do you support eliminating FEMA? Do you support eliminating FEMA?
There's portions of FEMA that
Do
need
you
to be back in
support
state.
eliminating
There's no yes or
FEMA?
no question on that. There's
Do you
portions that need to go back
support
to the state.
eliminating FEMA?
The record will reflect the
That
response.
is
The record will reflect the response. Is there another
supports
question?
it. Yeah, because let me just say, in April of 2025, the Trump administration prematurely, I'm glad we got that answer, because the poor gentleman who came before, it may have been with you, Mr. Chairman, that came before our committee, and I asked him this question, and he said, because Secretary Noem said, yes, she and the president wanted to eliminate FEMA. The gentleman said that he said it should be reformed, and the next day he was fired. Let it show that the secretary believes that we should shut FEMA down.
I never
April
said
2025,
that.
the
Mr.
administration.
Chairman, I never said that.
The administration prematurely,
The record will reflect
unlawfully
what you did and didn't
ended
say accurately.
FEMA's BRIC program. He intentionally halted roughly 2,000 active infrastructure and disaster mitigation projects across the country, including one in downtown New Haven, Connecticut. A coalition of 22 states and D.C. sued FEMA. A federal judge ruled in favor of the states in December, mandated that FEMA restore the over $3.6 billion in canceled funding. At the beginning of March, the judge had to order FEMA to comply with that ruling. 3 months ago, the day after you took over as secretary, FEMA formally announced a, quote, new and improved BRIC program. Yet, almost all of these communities are still waiting for their BRIC funding to be restored. Tell me, Mr. Secretary, when can communities with halted projects expect to receive their BRIC funding?
We actually restarted that when I first came in, and we did 24 or 25 of them. So
You've done 24 of the 25
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
2,000.
Let me clarify that. So
Please.
2024 and 2025, they sent out the notice of notification so everybody can now submit, and those projects that were already submitted for those times period will be
How many
reevaluated.
projects are there?
We can get you the details. on
Please,
that.
there were 2,000 that we started with.
The Secretary also provided direction for 2026 to get the NOFOs out on that, and that'll come out sometime in September. The Secretary has done more to get that.
I do not need your, you do not need to.
I just want to make sure you're clear.
Well, please.
Okay.
Spare us. You know, just give me the facts. Just give
did.
me the numbers. Let me just conclude, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I would like to work in an open and in a transparent way, because that BRIC funding for New Haven, Connecticut, which I probably will not get because I'm in a blue state, that the BRIC funding for New Haven, Connecticut is important, which is why we support the programs, bipartisan support for the BRIC program. So please, let's get the NOFOs out as quickly as possible and get the money to the communities that need them. My final comment to you is, I'd just like to go back a second. We need to go back to the issue of deaths in custody. It doesn't do anyone good to deflect, talk about what's happening in the criminal system in Illinois or in Oklahoma. What we need, because 54 deaths are 54 in what is civil detention, we need a plan to address the fact that 54 people in your department they were in civil detention, it's not criminal detention, are dead. They should not be. We need to hear from you. I don't need an answer now. There is no time. I've taken an enormous amount of time. Get us a policy, a plan, in a timely fashion that says, how are we going to...
Did you catch the distraction tactic that just happened? Mullen confidently claimed that 450,000 children were lost under the current administration. But instead of validating it with precise data, he just shifted the blame. He totally ignored the reality that these tracking gaps were a long-standing federal issue. When a department leader misrepresents a policy under oath that reveals the whole picture, that moment was the boiling point of an argument that had been brewing since the hearing started. Mark Wayne Mullen came to this hearing as the newly confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security, a position he had held for only about 3 months at the time of this hearing. Before that, he was a senator from Oklahoma, a decorated Navy SEAL, and one of the more combative Republican voices in the chamber. He did not arrive at this hearing prepared to absorb criticism quietly. That much became clear within seconds of his first interruption. Rosa DeLauro has been in Congress since 1991. She represents Connecticut's 3rd congressional district, which includes New Haven, a city she mentioned by name in this very hearing in connection with the BRIC infrastructure funding. She has served on the House Appropriations Committee for decades and has a long record on issues involving children, labor, and federal spending. She knows what oversight hearings are supposed to look like. She also knows when someone is trying to run out her clock. What Mullen did by interrupting her was not simply impatient. It was a specific move. When a witness interrupts a member during their allotted time in a congressional hearing, they are not just being rude. They are making a structural argument that the questions being asked do not deserve the courtesy of an uninterrupted answer, and that the witness has the standing to decide that. Mullen made that argument repeatedly, and he made it with a pointed finger. DeLauro's immediate response, "Don't you point your finger at me," was not a moment of losing composure. It was a boundary drawn in real time, on the record, in front of cameras. She followed it with something sharper. "Don't be a hypocrite." That word landed differently than anything else said in those first minutes. Hypocrite. Not wrong, not mistaken, not partisan. Hypocrite. It accused Mullen of knowing better while doing otherwise. His reply came fast. "I will point my finger at you. Not a retreat, not a softening. A direct counter-assertion of the right to do exactly what she had told him not to do." The substance underneath all of this was real and serious. DeLauro raised the 3,900 children separated from their families under the family separation policy that began in 2018. That number is documented. The policy, known internally as zero tolerance, was announced by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions in April 2018 and resulted in the prosecution of thousands of adults crossing the border with children. The separations followed from those prosecutions automatically because children could not be held in adult detention facilities. What was not automatic, and what was never adequately arranged, was a system to reunite them afterward. Mullen's counter was the 450,000 children he claimed were lost under the Biden administration. That figure comes from reports about unaccompanied minors who were released to sponsors and then lost contact with immigration authorities. A 2023 New York Times investigation and subsequent congressional testimony documented that tens of thousands of migrant children had been placed with sponsors and then could not be located for follow-up checks. The numbers in that reporting ranged widely, and lost in that context meant the government had lost contact, not necessarily that the children were in danger or had disappeared. But the gap in federal tracking was real and was acknowledged by the Biden administration. Both sets of children represent genuine failures of government. What Mullen was doing by pivoting to the 450,000 was not wrong on the facts. What DeLauro was pointing out was the double standard. Those who had been the loudest about one issue were completely silent about the other. Neither side resolved that tension. The chairman eventually had to intervene just to restore some basic order. Then the hearing moved to TSA, and the argument shifted from children to workers, and from moral accountability to financial accountability. The stakes changed, but the temperature did not come down. DeLauro's point about TSA workers was grounded in an uncomfortable recent history. The 2018 to 2019 government shutdown was the longest in American history, lasting 35 days. TSA officers, classified as federal workers, but not under Title V civil service protections because of their status under the Aviation and Transportation Security Act of 2001, were required to work without pay throughout that period. Airports reported increased call-outs. Lines grew. The pressure on those workers was direct, measurable, and personal. The collective bargaining question DeLauro raised is not a new dispute. TSA workers gained limited collective bargaining rights through an administrative order years ago, lost them during the prior administration, and regained them recently through a 2023 decision by the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Federal courts have twice ruled against the current administration's attempt to reverse that. DeLauro cited both rulings. Mullen did not address them directly. Instead, he pivoted to the shutdown vote question, which became its own argument, and which the chairman had to manage from the side. The back and forth on who shut down the government is one of the oldest and most circular fights in Washington, and for good reason. It almost never resolves cleanly. Government shutdowns happen when Congress fails to pass appropriations bills or continuing resolutions. Both parties have, at various points, voted against funding measures for strategic reasons. Whether those votes constitute shutting down, the government depends entirely on how you frame the sequence of events, and each side always has a framing that makes the other side look like the one who pulled the trigger. What happened next in this hearing was the part that most viewers would not have anticipated going in. DeLauro asked Mullen whether he supported eliminating FEMA. She asked it 3 times. He never said no. He said there are portions that need to go back to the states. He said there is no yes or no answer. The chairman noted that the record would reflect the response. DeLauro made her own characterization explicit. She said the record showed he supports shutting FEMA down. Mullen objected. I never said that. But he also never said the opposite. That is not a small thing. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, was created in 1979 under President Carter through an executive order that merged several existing civil defense and disaster relief agencies into a single federal body. It has been reorganized and reformed multiple times since, most significantly after Hurricane Katrina in 2005 exposed deep coordination failures. The agency now oversees disaster declarations, coordinates federal response to major emergencies, administers flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program, and manages the BRIC program DeLauro raised later. The BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, was created by the Disaster Recovery Reform Act of 2018 with bipartisan support. It funds pre-disaster mitigation, meaning projects designed to reduce the damage of future disasters before they happen. Seismic retrofits, flood barriers, wildfire-resistant infrastructure, stormwater management systems. The roughly 2,000 projects that were halted when the administration canceled BRIC funding in early 2025 were not hypothetical, they were active. Communities had already begun planning around them. A coalition of 22 states and the District of Columbia sued FEMA over the cancellation. A federal judge ruled in their favor. Then the judge had to order compliance a second time. By the time of this hearing, Mullen said 24 or 25 projects had been restarted. DeLauro's echo of that number, of the 2,000, said everything she needed to say without saying anything more. He could not dispute the arithmetic. The deputy secretary stepped in at that moment to add context about 2026 notice of funding opportunities. DeLauro cut him off. The exchange was brief and telling. She was not interested in future plans. She wanted to know what had happened to the existing commitments. And she mentioned New Haven specifically, acknowledging openly that she doubted her district would receive its funding because it is a Democratic constituency in a blue state. That is a remarkable thing to say on the record. It is also, depending on who you ask, either a frank acknowledgement of political reality or an unfounded accusation. She left it in the record without asking Mullen to respond. Then came the final subject, the loss of lives in civil detention. 54 people lost their lives in immigration and customs enforcement civil detention facilities. DeLauro was careful with that word, civil. These were not people convicted of crimes. They were not serving sentences. They were held in administrative detention pending immigration proceedings. 54 of them never made it out. She did not ask Mullen to respond in the hearing. She asked him to produce a plan, to get it to the committee in a timely fashion, to tell them how the department intended to address these fatal incidents in facilities where the government has a duty of care. He did not respond. The time had run out. That is not a procedural footnote. When a member of Congress asks a cabinet secretary to provide a plan addressing these fatal cases in government custody, and the response is silence followed by the end of the clock, what happens next depends entirely on whether the committee follows up with formal requests, subpoenas, or public pressure. The record DeLauro was building throughout this hearing was not just about winning arguments in the room. It was about creating a paper trail that could anchor future oversight. What it means for the conduct of this department, for the officials who run it, and for the institutions that are supposed to provide oversight is a question that will outlast this hearing by a long way. But what do you think? Should a department head be held to the strict letter of accountability, or does Washington get to make its own rules? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. To support our mission of preserving these hidden archives and bringing real accountability to light, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.